So this video is meant to just kind of summarize everything that we talked about with zero and negative exponents and all of their conclusions. There are some examples at the end of this video, so you might want to get a piece of paper and take some notes, see if that helps you. Alright, here we go. So the conclusions. First of all, the reason that we do stuff with zero and negative exponents is because your final answers after simplifying can't contain negative exponents. The only time you're allowed to actually have negative exponents in your answers is if we're doing scientific notation. And in this case, we're going to go over some problems where they're not in scientific notation, okay? The number one thing people think are that negative exponents represent negative numbers, and that's not true. So negative exponents do not represent negative numbers. They represent fractions. Alright? They don't represent negative numbers. They represent fractions. Okay? And then the other thing to keep in mind is any number to the 0 power is equal to 1. Alright, so there's 3 things to keep in mind when you are trying to simplify negative exponents. If you have a negative exponent in the numerator, which I say when it's upstairs, you make it positive by putting it downstairs. So you put the base and the exponent downstairs and make it positive, or in the denominator. Alright, so I'm going to write put it in the denominator, which you'll hear me say, put it downstairs. Alright, so some examples are below. Number 1, or letter A. A to the negative second, not a negative number. It means 1 over 8 to the positive second. Remember to change that exponent to a positive number. And then 8 squared is 64, so it's 1 over 64. The next one, B, is just going to be 1 over x to the first, but we don't actually need the little 1 there because everything's to the first power. So this one would just be plain old 1 over x. For C, this guy has a negative exponent, that y doesn't. So I'm just going to move this guy downstairs. There's nothing left upstairs, so it's a 1. So it's 1 over x to the fourth y. The next one, 5 to the negative second. Do not try to make that negative 25. It's not. You have to put it downstairs to make it a positive exponent, so it becomes 1 over 5 to the second times a. The a stays there because it doesn't have a negative exponent. 5 squared is 25, so it's 1 over 25a. And so if a negative exponent is in the denominator or downstairs, you can make it positive by putting it upstairs. Putting it in the numerator. Which is upstairs. So you basically are just moving its position. To make it positive, you're moving its position. So 1 over 7 to the negative second, that guy right there becomes positive by putting it upstairs. So it becomes 7 to the second. And 7 to the second is 49. And note, there's nothing in the denominator because we moved it upstairs. Like technically there'd be a 1 in the denominator, but 49 over 1 is just 1. So the next one, c to the negative third. That guy's in your denominator, so you've got to put that in the numerator, and it becomes c to the positive third. There's nothing in the denominator. It's a 1, and we don't put 1s in the denominator because it wouldn't be fully simplified. G, this guy right here, negative exponent. If I want to make it positive, I'm going to move it upstairs. The 3 is totally fine. I'm going to leave that 3 alone. It becomes 3x to the first, but x to the first is just x. Alright, for H, common mistakes here, people try to move the negative 4. Is that an exponent? No. You only move the base and the exponent of negative exponents, right? So this guy right here, that negative 3 is only attached to the y, and just that guy moves upstairs. So this guy right here goes upstairs. The 3 down there stays there. The 4 at the top stays there. So this becomes negative 4 xy to the positive third over the third. The negative 4 doesn't stay there. Negative numbers are fine. It's just negative exponents. All right, so now if you have a negative exponent on the outside of a set of parentheses, you can make that outside exponent positive by flipping or finding the reciprocal of what's inside the parentheses. Flipping what's inside parentheses. Sorry, my handwriting gets really bad with this weird pen. So flipping what's inside parentheses. And so when you flip it, that doesn't change any of the exponents on the inside of the parentheses. It only changes the outside exponent. So just to make that guy right there positive, I flip the inside. So it becomes 4 over 3 to the positive second power. And then you can bring that 2 in. Okay? So then 4 squared is 16. 3 squared is 9. And so technically you could bring that negative 2 inside to everybody and then move all of it, but I think it's easiest to just flip the inside. Okay, so this guy right here becomes positive when I flip what's on the inside of the parentheses. So I'm going to flip n over m. The whole thing then becomes the positive first power, which n over m to the first power is just n over m. So you're flipping the inside. Okay, to make this guy positive, you flip the inside. So it becomes y over 3x. The whole thing now becomes to the positive second. And now I bring this in to everybody. So I get y to the second over 3 to the second is 9, so it's 9x to the second. All right, so let's do some examples. My advice for you would be to write down these problems and try them on your own, and then see if you got them right by listening to the video. All right, so the first one, there's a couple ways you could look at it. You could just say 2 to the negative fourth. You could make that 1 over 2 to the positive fourth times 1 over 4 to the second, and then simplify that. 2 to the fourth power is 16, so you get 1 over 16 times 1 over 4 to the second is 1/16 as well. And then 1/16 times 1/16, you should know 16 times 16 by now is 256, so it's 1 over 256. So another way of looking at this problem too is just to look at it. There's not a fraction bar. So since there's not a fraction bar, you can assume everything's in the numerator. And so the other thing that you could do to look at it is just draw a fraction bar here, like there's a 1, and then this guy has a negative exponent, so put it downstairs, and it becomes 1 over 2 to the fourth times this becomes positive by putting it downstairs, and it becomes 4 to the second. And so then, just like we did before, you have 1 over 16 times 16, which is still 1 over 256. So it's however you want to look at it, all right? The next one, 4 to the 0. Well, 4 to the 0 is 1 times 1 over 6 to the third. Okay, if you wanted to put a fraction bar here and put a 1 right here and just say, okay, I'm just going to put this guy downstairs, you still have the same thing, right? Like 6 to the third power. 4 to the 0, anything to the 0 power is equal to 1, that's a 1. And 6 to the third power, you should know, is 1 over 216. You should know 6 to the third power. All right, the next one, letter C. Okay, so here you have some things with negative exponents and some things with positive exponents. The things with positive exponents stay put. And notice, this guy right here, negative exponent. We're going to move that guy downstairs. This guy right here, negative exponent, you're going to move that downstairs. This guy, is that a negative exponent? It's not. It's a negative number taken to a positive exponent. So keep in mind, this little trick only works for exponents. So there's only 2 things that I'm going to move. I'm going to move this guy downstairs. I'm going to move this guy downstairs. So on the top, I'm going to have 3 to the second power. On the bottom, I'm going to have 2 to the positive first times negative 4 to the positive second times 2 to the positive third. And then I should simplify these. So 3 to the second is 9, 2 to the first is 2, negative 4 to the second, a negative times a negative is a positive, positive 16 times 2 to the third power is 8. So now, if I could, that 9 right there, if you could reduce any of this, because it's all multiplication down here, you could totally do that. But 9. There's nothing that goes into 2, 16, or 8. So this, I'm just going to multiply it together. And when you multiply it together, you're going to get 9 over, well, instead of doing, you could do 2 times 16 is 32, and then 32 times 8, my brain is going, I want to do 2 times 8, which is 16, and then 16 times 16, we should know, is 256. Okay, again, if you're using this video to remind you what to do with negative exponents, seriously, try these problems. See if you can get them right. All right, so this next one, you have a fraction, 16 over 12. These guys aren't exponents. You're going to treat them like a fraction, 16 over 12. And then your negative exponents, this guy, x, I'm going to move. The 16 doesn't move with it because only the negative 5 is attached to the x. And then this negative 2 is only attached to the y. That x doesn't go anywhere. Okay? So let's deal with the 16 over 12 first. Well, 16 over 12 is divisible by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So now when I go to move this guy right here, that's going to become positive x to the 5th on the bottom. Notice I've got an x down here already. That's not going to move, so I'm going to put those together. X to the 5th and x is x to the 6th. And then here, this guy is going to go upstairs and become positive. So upstairs I'm going to have a y to the 2nd, and then the y to the 5th and the y to the 2nd can go with each other to give us y to the 7th. Done. All right, the next one. You have a negative exponent on the outside. You could right now just flip the whole thing and go from there. My personal opinion, you're going to hear me say this all the time, is that if you can simplify what's on the inside of the parentheses first, do that, then deal with the flipping. But some people just see that negative exponent and they have to flip it, okay? So if you're flipping it right now, none of the exponents on the inside change. The only exponent that changes is the outside exponent. But I'm going to simplify this guy first. All right, so I'm going to simplify 16 over negative 2. Well, that's just plain old 16 divided by negative 2. Let's make that negative 8. All right, so we've got negative 8. And then I've got some a's here. Notice I have two a's at the top. That's a to the 2nd. These two a's at the top are going to cancel out two a's at the bottom. So on the bottom, I'm going to have a to the 3rd. And then the b's on the top, if you notice the b's at the top, you've got b to the 2nd, b to the 3rd. Well, that's b to the 5th over a b. b to the 5th, canceling out one of the b's, well, that's going to leave me with b to the 4th at the top. This whole thing is being taken to the negative 3rd power. All right? So now to make that guy positive, flip the inside. So I'm going to flip the inside and make it a to the 3rd over negative 8 b to the 4th. That whole thing now is going to the positive 3rd power. Now bring in the 3. Bringing in the 3, you get a to the 9th on the top over, well, negative 8 to the 3rd power. You should know 8 to the 3rd power is 512. And because it's an odd, you're taking a negative number to an odd power. That's going to give you negative 512 b to the 12th power. So remember, when you bring this guy in, you're multiplying the exponents, and this guy technically has an exponent of 1 on it. All right. The next one. Again, you notice that outside exponent, you might decide to flip it right now. But keep in mind, if you flipped it right now, that negative 2 would still stay negative, that negative 5 would still stay negative. It is my advice to simplify this whole inside thing before you flip it. That's just my advice, because the order of operations says do what's inside parentheses first and then deal with your exponents. This would be like that outside exponent. If you can do something inside these parentheses, you should go ahead and do it. Now, biggest thing people mess up on is this guy. They automatically start saying this is negative 36, right? It's not. This needs to come downstairs. The negative 2 becomes positive. That negative 6, it would be negative 6 to the positive 2nd on the bottom. So I'm just going to write that. Right now, I'm simplifying the whole inside. Okay? So the bottom, I'm going to make it negative 6 to the positive 2nd. So I dealt with that. Okay? I'm going to deal with the x's here. That x and that x to the 3rd is going to leave me with x to the 2nd on the bottom. I have a 16 at the top. I'm just going to write it there. This y to the 5th is going to come upstairs with that y to the 2nd. It's going to become y to the positive 5th with a y to the second is y to the 7th. The whole thing to the negative first power, okay? Now you can flip it. And then when you flip it, flip this whole thing, I would make this positive 36 now, because negative 6 squared is positive 36. So I'm going to have 36 x to the second over 16 y to the 7th. The whole thing to the first power. Well, you know anything to the first power is just the stuff inside there, right? So it's still 36x squared over 16y to the 7th, but let's just reduce it. 36 and 16 are divisible by 4. 36 divided by 4 is 9. So we've got 9x to the second over 16 divided by 4 is 4. 4y to the 7th. The whole thing was to the first power, so bring in that first power, and you still just get 9x to the second over 4y to the 7th. All right, here we go. 3 more problems to try. So, when you go to do this one, keep in mind, again, you are only moving things with negative exponents. So is negative 2 an exponent? It's not. It's a coefficient. It's a regular number. So that guy stays there. This guy moves downstairs. X to the negative third becomes x to the third on the bottom. Z to the negative first becomes z to the positive first on the bottom. So I'm not going to do any reducing or anything right now. I typically would do it, but I'm just going to move stuff right now. So I'm going to have negative 2 y to the 6th on the top. On the bottom, I'm going to have 8 x to the positive third y z to the positive first. So I'm not even going to write that 1 there because it's not necessary. That's a z. Sorry, it's ugly. Now let's reduce this stuff, okay? Negative 2/8. That's a fraction. Reduces to negative 1/4, right? So I'm going to have negative 1/4. And then that y to the 6th over y, that y cancels out, leaving you with 5 on the top. So it's y to the 5th. There's no y's on the bottom. And on the bottom, you just have x to the third z. Does that negative 1 need to be there? It doesn't, right? Their final answer would really look like this. Negative y to the 5th over 4x to the third z. Okay, the next one. 50 over 30. Reduce it. 50 over 30, divisible by 10. So it'd be 5 over 3. A to the 0, well, that's 1, right? We don't even need that. That a down at the bottom stays the same. B to the third becomes b to the positive third on the bottom. The b to the 5th, negative 5th, becomes b to the positive 5th on the top. The c's, they cancel out because c over c is 1. And so now reduce the 5 to the b to the 5th over b to the third. So b to the third cancels out 3 on the top, so you're left with 5 b to the second over 3a. Done. All right, the next one. The parentheses in this problem. This set of parentheses just goes around this. It does not go around the whole thing. Same here. This set of parentheses belongs with that negative 3. So everything inside this set of parentheses is going to negative 3. Everything inside this set of parentheses goes to the 0 power. You don't need to worry about this. You don't have to simplify that x to the negative third at all, because what's anything to the 0 power? It's 1. So this guy cancels out completely and becomes 1. It doesn't even exist. Okay, the next thing, you could take that negative 3 and put it on the 5, the x and the y, and then move everything downstairs. But I'm just going to take this whole thing right here and move the whole thing downstairs to make this negative 3 positive 3. Okay, now notice at the top, I have a 1. When everything from the upstairs either goes away or you got to move it, it's a 1 up there. All right, so now down at the bottom, I'm going to have 2x to the third y times 5xy to the positive third power. All right, and so now I'm going to bring in that 5, or that 3 out there. So I'm going to have 1 over 2x to the third y times 5 to the third is 125. X to the third, y to the third, and then you put it all together. 2 times 125 is 250. Don't forget the 1 on the top because this is a fraction. 1 over 250 is a really different than just 250. So that 1 is important up there. X to the 6th, y to the 4th. We're adding exponents now because we're just multiplying straight across. So there you have it, negative exponents and 0 exponents. I hope that was helpful.